Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Books with Meena. I'm Meena and today I'm going to be filming my wrap up for the month of February. So February as a reading month was pretty okay. I read 4 books and I had a lot of books that I wanted to get to, but I couldn't get to all of them. I read only 4 and overall I enjoyed most of what I read, and without any further ado, let's just jump into the books. So the first book that I read in the month of February was The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid, and this one is a young adult sci-fi set in outer space, and in this we are following this diabolic creature called Nemesis. In this world, diabolics are basically human-like, uh, I guess living beings, but they're programmed in such a way that they have to unconditionally love their masters in order to be their bodyguards or protect them. They are physically very strong, and our main character's name is Nemesis. She is kind of bound to her master Sidonia, who is this young teenage girl, and both of them have actually kind of grown up together. At the beginning of the book, Sidonia is kind of, I guess you can say, she has to report to the capital city, to the emperor, and her parents are worried that she is going to be taken hostage. So they instead send Nemesis in Sidonia's place so that they can protect their daughter. And this world, while it's like sci-fi, it's like futuristic, set in outer space, I would say that so in some ways the world has advanced with the technology. It is set in outer space and it is futuristic, but in other ways some things have regressed back because there is a monarchy and there is a class system. So this book, the one word if I had to describe it, would be fun. From the very first page I was engaged with the story throughout. I really enjoyed it, and by fun I don't mean that this book is always joyful and happy. What I mean is that there was always something happening with the plot that kept my attention and kept me turning the pages, because there is some amount of death and sadness in this book like any other book. So I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked Nemesis as a main character. I think that she was an interesting take on your cold-blooded or cold-hearted assassin trope. This one is very common in fantasy, and to see this in a sci-fi world with a character like Nemesis, who has only one goal in mind, and she thinks that she cannot feel anything. She does not have emotions like normal human beings, and also she's obviously very physically strong. I think that she's basically your cold-hearted assassin, but usually in other books I don't really tend to enjoy this trope a lot. However, in this book I enjoyed it a lot. I really liked Nemesis. The first 15 to 20% of this book, the plot doesn't really start. You're kind of just following Nemesis in her day-to-day life, but I think that slower part of the book was necessary to kind of establish Sidonia and Nemesis's relationship, their bond, the way they love each other, their friendship, the way they care for each other. Because if we hadn't established that, I think the whole book would have fallen flat. Because basically, Nemesis's whole purpose in life is to basically protect Sidonia. She is living for Sidonia. The only reason I gave this book a 4 instead of a full 5 out of 5 stars is because it felt a little bit rushed towards the end. Certain parts of the book towards the end, I just felt like they could have been fleshed out a little bit more. And in the beginning, I think this book was actually initially supposed to be a standalone, and later on it was expanded to a trilogy. So I can totally see the author wanting to wrap everything up in one book, which is why some things felt a little bit rushed. And I'm pretty sure some of these other things will be fleshed out in the sequels. But in this book, some of the aspects I did find to be just a little bit, they fell flat towards the end. But other than that, I found this book to be really enjoyable. Also, another reason that this book kind of, I wouldn't say disappointed me, but it was a little bit different than I was expecting, was I actually was kind of hoping to see this diabolic uprising against the monarchy, all of these diabolics coming together and fighting for their rights, I guess, because they have all been treated like servants. They're basically servants, and that did not really happen, because at the beginning of the book, because of certain events, most of the diabolics have been wiped out, and Nemesis is the only one of the only a couple of diabolics are remaining in this world, and one of them is Nemesis. So this book was almost like a personal journey for her, to kind of starting to understand that she also deserves respect and equality and all the rights that humans enjoy and have. So yes, 4 out of 5 stars. Next book that I read was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This one is a new adult slash adult fantasy romance, and this one is about Poppy, who is a maiden. She's living to be she's like almost this, I would say, she's almost like a religious figure in her kingdom, and she is kept very sheltered. She's not allowed to mingle with other people or have friends, have experiences. She is under scrutiny all the time, and at the age of 19 she is going to be ascended to the gods, which is basically she will become immortal and probably gain some like magical abilities. And at the beginning of the book, Poppy gets a new bodyguard. His name is Hawk, and it's a romance between the both of them. So this book I did not like that much. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I listened it via audiobook, and it was I think because I listened it through audio, I could enjoy it a little bit more, because if I had to sit down and read this book, I would have felt like I was wasting my time reading it. The audiobook was 20 hours long, and the book was like I think about 600 pages, and I think the biggest detriment for this book was its length. It was too long for what it was. There was almost no plot, and I could not care for most of what was happening in this story. I think we're stuck a lot in Poppy's head. Her thoughts are very repetitive, and even the conversations that she has with people are very repetitive. So I think that even though Poppy was likable, pretty likable, because she is trying to do good things and she wants her own agency when it comes to her own life. In that way, she is like a relatable and likable character. But the fact that we had to spend so much time in her head and keep hearing her repetitive thoughts made it a little bit annoying. And for a book that has so much in it, it has like fantastical elements. There are like vampires, werewolves. There's some amount of political tension because there's this like outside threat that is a threat to the kingdom and its monarchy. Then there's obviously romance between Poppy and Hawk. There are a lot of things in this book, but I think that I don't know how to categorize this fantasy. Is it like character driven? Is it romance focused? Is it more focused on the world building? Does it have an intricate magic system? I don't think the book had any of these things. Even the romance was just okay to me. I did not care about it, and everything was a slow burn. This whole book felt like a 600-page setup for the next book in the series. And I could almost call this a character driven fantasy because of the time we spend in Poppy's head with Poppy in her perspective. And so much of this book is about her personal struggles, but still somehow I don't think that this fits the character driven fantasy mold, because Poppy, she starts at point A, and by the end of the book she is still at point A, which is not a bad thing because like I said, she is a pretty well realized and likable character. But again, I don't know who to recommend this book to. I think I would say that I'm not really going to recommend this to anyone because I didn't enjoy it, and I don't see uh, anyone really enjoying this book, mostly because of its length and how dragged out everything was. The third book that I read this month was Race the Sands by Sarah Beth Durst. This one is an adult high fantasy standalone, and it is about Keyhawk racing. So Keyhawks in this world are basically monsters, and if you do something really bad in your past lifetime, you are going to be reborn as a Keyhawk, and that is like the worst fate possible. So Keyhawks are kind of like these hybrid animal creatures. They can be like half lion, half lizard, half crocodile, half rhinoceros. And I think my favorite part about this book were the Keyhawks and the Keyhawk racing. I thought that the way their personalities, the way that they can be trained and tamed, the way you can ride them, all of that was so interesting and very different from whatever I had seen so far in any fantasy book. As for the characters, we are following Tamra, she used to be a Keyhawk racer, but now she is a trainer for younger people on how to race these Keyhawks. And the second main character is Raya, who is Tamra's student, and she is like a very unlikely candidate for these races because she has no experience with Keyhawks or racing. The third main character is Augur Yorbel, who is this like basically augurs in this world are like priests. People look up to them. They are like these spiritual guides. They can read your auras and tell you what you are going to be reborn as, and they can guide you through life, I guess. And so I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I think for a book that is about like 500 pages and wraps up the entire story and plot in one book, it was very well paced. Things kept happening and it kept me engaged throughout the story. The characters are very likable. From the very beginning, you have a good sense of who they are as people. Tamara is very stubborn and strong willed. Then we have Raya, who's a little bit self doubting and timid but has a lot of potential. Then we have Augur Yorbel, who is this very like righteous person who is always trying to do good and questioning his morality. So we do have a good sense of these characters, and I did like them and I did like following them, but I kind of wanted a little bit more from them to fully connect with these characters. But other than that, I don't really have any complaints about this book. At the 50% point in this book, the setting kind of changes from point A to point B, and I really liked that because it made the stakes higher and made everything more interesting. And maybe more dramatic, more things were happening now. The ending, the last like 30-40% was super like fast paced and wild, lots of action, lots of just things happening, and I flew through the last 30-40% of this book. So overall, 4 out of 5 stars. Do recommend this book. It's a good standalone novel if you want to read one of those. And the last book that I read in the month of February was A Conspiracy of Kings by Megan Whalen Turner. This one is the fourth book in the Queen's Thief series, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So another 4 out of 5 stars in February for me. And in this, we're actually following the side character that we met in book 1. So we're kind of shifting focus from the previous books in terms of character and even setting. So Sophos is the main character in this book. I really liked getting to know him slowly throughout the book. At the beginning, he is very like underestimated and seen as weak, but throughout the book, you kind of get to see how he grows into his responsibility and his leadership position in the book. And I did find that the middle portion of this book kind of slogged a little bit for me. I found it to be a little bit slow. It dragged a little bit, but other than that, I think this was a very character driven novel with obviously lots of politics and war going on, like any other novel in this series. The writing is still simple and straightforward, and surprisingly, there was a cute romance in this which I really enjoyed. I think that came as a surprise to me. Other than that, I don't really have a lot to say about this book. It is a sequel, so I can't talk much about it. So yes, 4 out of 5 stars. And that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know in the comments down below what you read in the month of February, if you have read any of these books, and what did you think of them. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share if you would want to do so. And that's it. Goodbye.